I always believed that vacations tell you everything you need to know about a person, the way they treat hotel staff, how they react to delays, and whether they'd think it's funny to abandon you at a five-star hotel with a $4,800 dinner. Bill, let me rewind. It was supposed to be a celebration, a little escape from work, pressure, and routine. My husband had just signed a big contract, and he decided to book a weekend getaway at one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. Five-star suites, ocean view, imported champagne. The kind of place you don't even bother checking the price for because you already know it's insane. He invited his two closest friends to join us, guys he'd known since college. Loud, always joking, the type who believes sarcasm is a love language. I didn't mind. I've learned to smile through their weird humor. And besides, it wasn't my trip. It was his celebration. The first day was beautiful. The sun kissed the balcony just right. The pool sparkled like something out of a magazine. And everyone was in a good mood. I even caught myself thinking, maybe we needed this. That night, we all had dinner at the resort's rooftop restaurant. The kind of place where the napkins are softer than your bedsheets and a glass of wine costs more than a week's groceries. They ordered everything. Starters, mains, desserts, drinks, cigars. The waiter kept coming, smiling, refilling glasses, and writing down dishes I couldn't pronounce. I barely ate. I just listened to the laughter, the business stories, and their remember that one time kind of jokes. It was fine, really, until it wasn't, because the next evening, something changed. They ordered even more this time. Bottles of wine with names I'd never heard of. A chef's private tasting menu that wasn't even on the menu. And then, the bill came, $4,800. I looked up, expecting someone to laugh and say, "Okay, time to split." But instead, they stood up, all three of them, and they left. At first, I thought they were just stepping out for a smoke. That's the thing about betrayal. It rarely shows up with flashing red lights. Sometimes it walks out the door laughing while you're still sitting at the table, wondering if it's all just part of the joke. I watched them leave. My husband and his two best friends clapping each other on the back, giggling like schoolboys. No one even looked back. The waiter stood there, awkwardly holding the check folder, leather-bound, classy, too elegant to match what was happening. Cleared my throat. "Excuse me?" I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. "Could you just place it on the table?" He nodded, gently set it down, and walked away, as if he too didn't know whether this was a prank or a crime. I opened the folder, 4,836.25 to be exact. The total blinked at me like an insult. I could see the breakdown. 6 bottles of wine, the chef's signature tasting experience, imported oysters, custom desserts, even a round of cigars I never touched. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. That's one thing I've always known how to do, keep my cool. Across the room, a couple glanced over. A group of women whispered at the next table. I could feel their eyes crawling over me, dissecting my situation without a word being said. They knew. They all knew I'd just been publicly humiliated. My husband, the man I married, thought it would be funny to abandon me with a dinner bill worth more than some people's monthly income. And his friends, who'd seen me at our wedding, who'd sat at our kitchen table, found it hilarious too. "She can handle it," one of them had said, laughing as they left. It echoed in my head. Not just the words, but the tone. Condescending. Dismissive. Like I was a side character in their little sitcom. And for a moment, I felt like breaking down. But then, something in me shifted. Maybe it was the waiter returning with a glass of water, offering a quiet, knowing nod. Maybe it was the soft jazz playing in the background. Or maybe it was the fact that I'd had enough of being disrespected, underestimated, and laughed at. I reached into my bag, pulled out my card. Not our joint card. Mine. I handed it to the waiter with a small smile. "Will this be sufficient?" I asked politely. He nodded, as if he understood more than I was saying. As he walked away, I sat back in the velvet chair, hands folded. I didn't call my husband. I didn't send a message or even glare toward the door. I simply waited for the receipt. And in that stillness, something powerful happened. I realized they hadn't just walked out on the bill. They'd walked out on something far bigger. Trust, respect, the version of me that tolerated being treated like an afterthought. When the waiter returned, I tipped him generously, thanked him, and stood. Up, not hurried, not ashamed, just done. I walked back to our suite. Well, technically, our suite. Packed my bag silently, and left the room key on the marble desk beside the untouched bottle of champagne. I booked another room on the other side of town. Quiet. Out of sight. Paid in full with my own name. No husband attached. That night, I turned my phone off. Not silent. Off. Because tomorrow, he'd be looking for me. And unlike that dinner bill, I wouldn't be there waiting to be picked up. It's funny how quiet the world gets when you stop answering to people. No buzzing notifications, no apologies, no explanations. Just you, a dimly lit hotel room, and the growing clarity of what you're not willing to tolerate anymore. I sat on the edge of the new bed, the one I'd booked under my own name. No frills, no roses on the pillow, just clean white sheets and peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt the air around me wasn't charged with expectation. My phone lay on the nightstand, powered off, because I knew exactly what would be waiting if I turned it on. Missed calls, texts ranging from confused to angry, maybe even the classic, "Where are you? You're overreacting." But I didn't need to see any of it. I didn't need his excuses or his friends' half-baked, "It was just a joke" texts. This wasn't about what they thought it was. This wasn't a prank. This was calculated humiliation. In public, in luxury, at my expense. Literally. And the worst part? He thought I'd take it. That I'd pay the bill, wait in the room, and maybe sulk for a bit. But in the end, laugh. It off too. Because that's the version of me he was used to. The agreeable one. The peacemaker. The woman who didn't want to make a scene. But that version? She paid the bill. Now she was gone. I opened my laptop, not to scroll social media or watch something mindless, but to act. I emailed my lawyer, the one I'd only met once, months ago, after another time he'd embarrassed me at a family gathering. I had a folder titled "Just in Case." I never thought I'd need it, but I'd kept records anyway. Call it intuition. Or maybe preparation disguised as paranoia. I sent her everything, copies of our joint financials, screenshots of past messages, and a note that simply said, "It's time. I'm not going back." She responded within minutes. Understood. "I'll start the paperwork first thing in the morning. Stay safe, then stay quiet." I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I felt powerful. The kind of power that doesn't scream or slam doors. It simply walks away and lets the other person discover what they've lost. I began taking control piece by piece, transferred money out of our joint account, froze. The cards I co-signed, changed every password I'd once shared, notified my business partner that I might be off the grid for a few days, and I booked a flight. One way, not home. Not anywhere he would expect. Someplace quiet, peaceful, far, enough to breathe, close enough to strike if needed. The best part? He had no idea. While he was probably drinking at the bar with his buddies, retelling the funny story about how they left me with the check, I was untangling myself from his life. Silently, legally, completely. By midnight, I was packed and ready. I stood by the hotel window, watching the city lights flicker. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was just removal. a clean cut. He left me with a bill. I left him with silence. And by the time he realized I wasn't answering, it would already be too late. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No alarms, no phone buzzing, no voice telling me we were late for checkout. Just sun creeping through the curtains and the realization that I had no one to answer to anymore. I made coffee, the strong kind I liked, not the watery one he always insisted was better for my anxiety. I powered on my phone. Our missed calls, 7 voicemails, 17 messages. I didn't open any of them, but the previews were telling enough. Where are you? This isn't funny anymore. Can you please pick up? You're being childish. Come on, we'll split the bill, okay? I told my parents you went shopping. Why are the cards frozen? There it was, the moment the joke stopped being funny. He tried calling again. I let it ring. Then I turned my phone back off and boarded my flight. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, he was unraveling. The front desk had informed him that the suite was no longer under the shared reservation, and that the remaining charges had been transferred, fully under his name, including the $1,300 per night rate, minibar, and room service he didn't remember ordering. Because I did. While he was out laughing, I had ordered everything I could in his name. A little parting gift. Nothing illegal. Just inconvenient. By midday, I received a message from my lawyer. He tried to access the joint account. It's locked. He's not listed on the emergency contacts anymore. All documentation is secured. We're filing officially this Friday. I sent a thumbs up emoji. It felt right. From mutual friends, I started hearing stories, the kind that always trickle out when someone's mask begins to slip. He'd tried to use his business card, but it had bounced. He called his parents, who were furious he hadn't told. Them I left. He made a scene in the hotel lobby. Security was called. One of his friends posted a picture of them at dinner with the caption, "Well, that backfired." Guess the story was spreading, but here's the real twist. What he didn't know was I hadn't just walked away. I'd documented everything. The receipts, the messages, the screenshots, even the voice note from a week earlier when he'd said, "You're lucky to have me. No one else would put up with your sensitivity." It was all in a file labeled, "In case he forgets who I am." And then came the best part. He tried to message me one more time. This one was different. "I'm sorry, I messed up. I don't know what came over me. Can we please talk? I miss you." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer and continued sipping espresso on a balcony in Santorini. Because that's where I was now. Not hiding, not crying, but watching the sun melt into the ocean, building the next version of my life. Meanwhile, back home, he was unraveling. His office had been contacted, not by me, but by HR. One of his coworkers had reported inappropriate workplace behavior, and while he wasn't fired, he was put under review. That big contract he'd celebrated? Turned out the client heard about what he'd done. They backed out, quietly. His friends? They stopped responding. Apparently, their wives didn't find the prank very funny. One even said, if he could do that to his own wife, what would he do to us? The same people who once laughed with him were now laughing at him. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to drag him through mud. All I did was remove myself and let his own actions echo. That was always the real revenge. He left me with a $4,800 bill. I left him with a lesson he'd never forget. A month passed. I didn't go back home, not even for a single night. Instead, I stayed in Santorini for 2 weeks, then booked a long stay in Portugal. After that, I moved city to city, working remotely, exploring, and for the first time in years, breathing. I wasn't running. I was resetting, and the strangest part? I didn't feel angry anymore. I wasn't rehearsing what I'd say if he called, Or what I should have said when they walked out of that restaurant. I wasn't checking his socials or reading old messages. I wasn't waiting for revenge to land, because it already had. Not through some dramatic takedown, not through yelling or exposing him, but through the quiet collapse of his own choices. I got updates, not because I looked for them, but because karma has a way of reporting back. He had to sell his car after that big client dropped the deal. His reputation at work took a hit he couldn't recover from. His friends distanced themselves, quietly at first, then completely. Even his parents, who once adored me, stopped defending him. Apparently his mother asked, "How did you think this would end? Leaving your wife with a bill like that? In public?" He didn't have an answer. I never told anyone the full story, not out of shame, but because I didn't need to explain. The people who mattered either already knew or didn't need to. And I focused on building again. I started a blog about strength, travel, and reclaiming your own narrative. It picked up faster than I expected. Brands reached out. Women sent messages thanking me for sharing stories that made them feel less alone, even though I hadn't shared this one. Not yet. Maybe one day I will. He tried to reach out 2 more times, once through email, once through a mutual friend. Both times, it was the same line. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a joke. I miss us." But there was no us anymore. There was just me, and I was no longer someone who stayed silent while being mocked. One night, as I sat on a rooftop cafe overlooking Lisbon, I took out my phone. I found the last message he'd sent, the apology, the guilt, the desperation. And I smiled, not out of spite, but because I finally understood something. He had thought the worst thing he could do was leave me with a bill, but the worst thing I could do was show him what life looked like, without me in it. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned my phone off and focused on the present moment, the quiet breeze, the lights of the city, the future I had built with nothing but strength, silence, and self-respect. They thought leaving me with the bill would break me, but I didn't break. I rebuilt. And this time, the cost was all theirs. If you felt anything while listening to this, drop a like and hit subscribe for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done? This is Twisted Karma.